The Los Angeles courtroom buzzed with tension in early 2025, the air thick with whispers, as Erika Jayne stepped forward, her blonde hair pulled tight, her face a mask of defiance amid the legal storm tied to her estranged husband, Tom Girardi. Once a titan of the legal world, Tom's empire had crumbled under allegations of embezzling millions from clients, plane crash victims, and vulnerable families, leaving Erika tangled in lawsuits claiming she knew, or should have known, about the fraud. She'd spent years rebuilding, her reality TV fame from Real Housewives of Beverly Hills now a double-edged sword, her every move dissected, her resilience tested daily. Today, though, wasn't just about depositions or asset freezes, it was personal. Judge Harold Grayson presided, a man in his late 60s with a reputation for sharp rulings and sharper words, his robe hanging loose over a frame that seemed to carry the weight of decades on the bench. He'd overseen Tom's disbarment in 2021 and now glared at Erika as she faced questions about her lavish lifestyle, the $20 million funneled into her company, EJ Global, a detail prosecutors wielded like a club. Grayson's patience frayed. "Fast?" His voice cutting through the room as he interrupted her attorney, his tone dripping with disdain, mocking her for thinking sequins and stilettos could dodge accountability. The gallery stirred, cameras clicked and Erika's jaw tightened, her hands curling into fists at her sides. What pushed a judge to cross that line? Was it the pressure of a high-profile case, the kind that could define his legacy, or something darker lurking beneath his gavel? Erika had endured public scorn, her divorce from Tom in 2020, a desperate escape from a sinking ship, her music career a lifeline she'd clawed back with every performance. Yet here, Grayson didn't just question her, he humiliated her, Barb's personal, calling her a glorified showgirl in a system that demanded respect he refused to give. Her attorney objected, but Grayson waved it off, his smirk widening, daring her to crack. Could she take this sitting down? Another blow in a fight she'd never signed up for? The room held its breath as Erika stood, her heels clicking against the floor, her eyes locking on Grayson's, a spark igniting behind the exhaustion. She'd lost everything once, her marriage, her wealth, her reputation, and rebuilt from the ashes a woman who'd sung XX Pennive while dodging bankruptcy filings. This wasn't about Tom anymore. It was about her, about surviving a system, rigged to bury her. What would she do with that fire? Would she let Grayson's mockery be the final nail, or turn it into the hammer that broke the whole damn coffin open? The answer simmered, raw and ready, as the courtroom waited. The stakes, climbing higher than anyone could guess. The courtroom's silence shattered as Erika Jayne's heels echoed, her stance unyielding under Judge Harold Grayson's smirk, the sting of his glorified showgirl jab still hanging in the air. She'd faced worse, tabloids tearing her. Apart after Tom Girardi's fraud unraveled, her $40,000 a month glam squad budget splashed across headlines while victims of his schemes wept for lost settlements. She'd sold her Pasadena mansion, downsized to a rental, and poured herself into music, every beat a defiance against the collapse. Now Grayson's taunt wasn't just an insult, it was a match tossed on a pile of kindling she'd carried too long, and she wasn't about to let it fizzle out. Her attorney, a wiry man named Kessler, leapt up, his voice sharp, demanding a recess. But Erika raised a hand, stopping him cold, her gaze never leaving the judge. She stepped closer to the bench, her presence electric, the gallery leaning in, sensing a shift. Grayson leaned back, his fingers drumming, amused, daring her to speak, and she did, her words measured but laced with steel, calling out his bias, his unprofessional scorn, a direct challenge to the man who held her fate. The bailiff tensed. Kessler paled, but Erika stood taller, her resilience a wall he couldn't crack, a woman who danced through fire and learned to wield it. Grayson's amusement curdled, his face reddening as he slammed the gavel, ordering her to sit, his voice booming about respect for the court. But Erika didn't flinch, her eyes burning, her silence louder than his outburst. The room buzzed, reporters scribbling, phones buzzing with leaked snippets, and Grayson's temper flared hotter, his next words a mistake, a personal dig about her pathetic little songs, a line too far even for his allies. Erika's lips twitched, not in defeat but in calculation. her mind racing, years of surviving Tom's shadow honing her instincts, her courage a blade she'd sharpened on betrayal and loss. Outside, the story exploded, social media igniting with clips of the clash, fans and foes alike rallying, some cheering her nerve, others decrying her audacity, but all hooked on the drama. Erika sat at last, her attorney whispering furiously, urging caution, yet she shook her head, her plan forming, a retaliation brewing not just for Grayson, but for every doubter who'd written her off. She'd turned eviction notices into stage, lights, and now she'd turned this courtroom into her arena, her fight a beacon for anyone who'd been kicked down and refused to stay there, the stakes soaring as Grayson's gavel trembled, his control slipping, her stand a spark ready to blaze. The courtroom's tension coiled tighter as Erika Jayne sat, her defiance a live wire sparking beneath Judge Harold Grayson's faltering grip, his gavel's echo fading into the hum of a room on edge. The leaked clips of his pathetic little songs jab raced across Twitter, hashtags flaring, her fans flooding comments with fire emojis, her critics clutching pearls, but all eyes stayed glued, the drama a magnet no one could resist. Erika's mind churned, her years of navigating Tom Girardi's legal mess, the $2 million in client funds he'd allegedly siphoned, now a crucible forging her next move, her resilience a shield she'd polished through every public gut punch. Grayson regained his footing, his voice icy as he resumed, grilling her about the $25 million in loans Tom funneled through her accounts, his tone dripping with sarcasm, painting her as a gold digger who'd played dumb while widows starved. The gallery murmured. Kessler objected, but Erika leaned forward, her eyes locked on Grayson, catching the flicker of unease beneath his bravado, a crack she'd pry open. She'd faced depositions, sold jewelry to pay bills, rebuilt her life, note by note, and this man's scorn wouldn't undo her, it would fuel her, her courage a quiet roar building in her chest. Then it came. Grayson's next misstep, a sneering aside about her tears for the cameras, a nod to her Real Housewives breakdowns, his arrogance blinding him to the line he'd crossed. Erika stood again, her voice low but piercing, accusing him of prejudice, of turning a hearing into a circus, her words a whip cracking through the room. The bailiff moved. Grayson bellowed for order, but she pressed on, her attorney scrambling, her stand a raw, unscripted rebellion, a woman who'd lost everything once and refused to bow now, her fight a mirror for anyone who'd ever been mocked into silence. The fallout hit fast. The clerk pausing, reporters bolting for the doors, Grayson's face a storm as he recessed the court, his robe flapping as he stormed out, leaving Erika steady, her breath shallow, her retaliation a seed planted in chaos. Outside, the internet erupted, legal analysts debating, her supporters chanting her name, the story twisting. Was she a victim turned warrior, or a diva playing martyr? She didn't care, her resolve ironclad. Her next step a gamble she'd take, a spark from Grayson's taunts now a flame she'd wield, her courage a call to rise, the courtroom a battleground where she'd rewrite the rules, the tide turning in ways no one saw coming. The courtroom doors swung shut behind Judge Harold Grayson's retreat, leaving Erika Jayne standing amid the chaos she'd ignited, her accusation of prejudice hanging heavy, the gallery abuzz with shock and whispers, her retaliation a bold stroke no one had scripted. Reporters spilled into the hall, phones alive with the clash, her words trending, legal blogs dissecting Grayson's meltdown, her supporters flooding Instagram with clips, her resilience a rallying cry for those who'd watched her claw back from Tom Girardi's ruin. She sat, her attorney Kessler gripping her arm, his face pale, urging her to back off, but Erika's eyes burned, her fight a fire she wouldn't douse. Not now, not ever. Grayson returned, his composure a thin veneer, his gavel slamming as he resumed his questions sharper, probing her role in Tom's firm, the $750,000 in earrings she'd once flaunted, now seized, his tone a blade slicing for weakness. Erika met him head-on, her answers clipped, her poise unshaken, every barb a brick she'd stack into a wall of defiance, her years of facing cameras, creditors, and courts a steel spine he couldn't bend. The room watched, riveted, as Grayson pushed harder, his sarcasm slipping into a rant, accusing her of manipulating the system. A reality star stunt, he sneered, his bias blatant, his control fraying further. Then the tipping point struck, Grayson's voice rising as he mocked her plea of ignorance about Tom's crimes, calling her a pretty face with empty pockets. A jab too personal, too reckless, and Erika snapped forward, her voice cutting through, demanding he recuse. Himself, her stand a thunderclap, the bailiff freezing, Kessler gasping, the gallery erupting. Grayson's gavel crashed, his shout for silence drowned. But Erika held her ground, her courage a beacon. A woman who'd sung through bankruptcy, danced past disgrace, now daring a judge to face his own flaws, her fight a testament to anyone who'd ever been dismissed. The hearing spiraled, Grayson adjourning in fury, his exit a storm, Erika's attorney scrambling for strategy, but she stayed calm, her mind racing, a recording device in her bag humming, a secret she'd kept, every taunt captured. Her retaliation a chess move years in the making. Outside the crowd swelled, chants of her name clashing with jeers. The story a wildfire, legal experts stunned, her defiance splitting opinions, but her resolve unshaken. A spark from Grayson's mockery, now ablaze she'd turn on him. Her triumph a whisper growing loud, a woman who'd refused to break, now ready to break the system instead. The courtroom's chaos lingered, as Erika Jayne sat steady. The recording device in her bag a silent ally, Judge Harold Grayson's furious exit, a crack she'd widened. Her demand for his recusal, a bold line drawn in a fight she'd refused to lose. The gallery emptied, reporters racing to file. Her name a lightning rod splitting the airwaves, her supporters hailing her as a phoenix, her detractors decrying her gall. But Erika's focus stayed razor-sharp, her resilience a rock forged through. Tom Girardi's collapse, the $15 million in liens against her, the years of clawing back dignity, now a weapon she'd wield with precision. Kessler paced, his voice tight, warning her of contempt, of consequences. But Erika pulled the recorder out, her fingers steady, replaying Grayson's taunts. His pretty face with empty pockets, sneer a damning echo, her evidence a grenade she'd lob at the system. She'd endured Tom's 2021 disbarment, the FBI raids, the loss of her Rolls-Royce, and rebuilt with every gig, every glare, her courage a flame that Grayson's mockery had only fed. She handed it to Kessler, her eyes fierce, her plan clear, a formal complaint to the judicial board her next strike, a move to flip the script, to turn his bias into her victory. Word spread fast, the tape leaking to a tabloid, Grayson's voice blasting online, legal circles reeling, his career teetering. As ethics probes loomed, Erika's stand a spark igniting a reckoning. She faced the press outside, her chin high, her words sparse but searing, framing her fight as survival, not spectacle, a woman who danced through ruin, now daring the law to bend. The crowd roared, some cheering, some booing, but all hooked, her attorney filing the complaint that night, her retaliation a tidal wave crashing over Grayson's bench, his taunts a noose tightening around his own neck. Grayson fought back, his allies rallying, claiming she'd entrapped him. But the tape told no lies, his scorn raw, his prejudice plain, and the judicial board moved, a hearing set, his suspension whispered, Erika's resolve a lighthouse in the storm. She returned to her rental, the TV blaring her story. Tanya's factory shifts a distant echo of her own grind, her fight a mirror for anyone who'd been crushed and rose again, her triumph near, a spark from a courtroom clash now ablaze exposing. Rot. A woman who'd refused to kneel, now standing taller, the endgame hers to claim. The judicial board's hearing room hummed with tension as Erika Jayne sat poised. The leaked tape of Judge Harold Grayson's taunts a smoking gun now in official hands, her complaint a bold stroke that had turned his mockery into her moment. Her resilience a banner, waving over a fight she'd refused to abandon. Grayson stood opposite, his face ashen, his robe traded for a suit, his allies dwindling, the pretty face with empty pockets Barb replaying on a screen, his career unraveling as the board deliberated. Her stand a testament to years of surviving Tom Girardi's fraud, the $10 million in assets she'd lost, the life she'd rebuilt from scratch. Testimony piled up, Grayson's defense shaky, claiming stress, not bias, but Erika's attorney Kessler shredded it, the tape's venom undeniable, her courage a quiet force that dwarfed his excuses. She spoke last, her voice steady, recounting the courtroom's humiliation, her fight not just for herself, but for anyone dismissed by power, a woman who'd turned eviction into anthems, disgrace into defiance, now facing down a judge who'd underestimated her. The room stilled, the board's eyes on her. Her journey from Real Housewives flashed to this raw victory, a story no one could ignore, her grit a spark that had lit a firestorm. The ruling came swift, Grayson's suspension ordered, then an arrest. Warrant? His off-bench threats to a clerk caught on another tape. A bribery attempt to silence the leak. His fall complete, handcuffs clicking as he was led out, Erika's retaliation a masterstroke that flipped the gavel's weight. Outside, the crowd erupted, her name a chant, cameras flashing, her triumph a wave crashing over years of doubt, her supporters weeping, her foes silenced, a woman who danced through ruin now standing as a warrior, her fight a beacon for the broken, the bold, the unbowed. Erika walked free, her rental waiting, the TV replaying her win, her music climbing charts again, her story a roar of resilience, a middle finger to every judge, every critic, every collapse that tried to bury her. She'd faced Tom's 2022 conviction, sold her past, rebuilt her soul, and now with Grayson's arrest, she'd turned mockery into justice, her courage a crown she'd forged, a legacy for anyone who'd ever been kicked down and rose, clapping for her, inspired by her, a flame that wouldn't fade, a victory whole and hers alone.